Sorry.
We have 2 students here. They'll introduce themselves, and we'll get going.
Super.
So I'm Gavin Simonson.
I'm Kaylee.
Hey, Gavin and Kaylee, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm wet because it's raining like a typhoon here in a week. Other than that, I'm great.
It's good. It's good.
Well, now I can actually see you. That's cool.
Sweet.
Go ahead. That's cool, just like it says on your hat. So far away.
All right. So Karina briefly told us about some bills that we wanted to hear about from you.
Okay.
You can tell us more about that.
Oh, I just lost your sound.
Problem.
You can hear now? Okay, try again. Sorry.
All right. So Karina briefly told us about some bills that you know about.
Yeah. So Karina sent me a couple bills that that she wanted me to take a look at. One of them is, so you just want me to march through those 3?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Super. So let me pull them up on my handy dandy little iPad here. First, sure. Do you have them in front of you? He can pull them up so that they're showing for you as well.
Do we?
First one is SB 5731.
Yeah, I have 5731, 5155, and 5596 as the 3 that the boss sent me.
Those are correct. Yes.
Excellent. So I'll start talking about them while Dave pulls them up here on the system.
Okay.
First one's 5731. That one allows the community college system to come up with, or the Board of Community and Technical Colleges to come up with some new high school equivalency tests, so that you don't have to do just one test in order to just not one test that'll meet the requirements for graduation. That one's moving through the system, and looks like it is getting good acceptance. This and the next one both were introduced, well, they all were introduced last year. This bill and the next one both haven't seen any action yet this year, but that doesn't mean they're not going to see any action. They just got put back where they were last year, so that they're sitting ready to be voted on by the full Senate rather than having to go through committee again. In the second year of the legislative session, the sessions go 2 different over a course of 2 years, and anything that isn't passed in the first year of the biennium sort of goes back to its last best place. So last year it got to the Senate Rules Committee, wasn't acted on, and so it sat in the Rules Committee. Thank you, Dave. In what we call the X file, as stuff that wasn't passed. And then when this 2018 regular session, as you can see at the bottom there, when it started in January, they put everything that had been in rules and put it back on the Rules Committee agenda. That just means it's ready for a vote by the full Senate. Stuff we talked about last week, right? It goes through a number of different committees. The last place it stops before it goes to the floor is the Rules Committee, and that means that's the list of stuff that's pending consideration on the full floor of the House or the Senate, but it has to get pulled out of there before it can get voted on the floor. So right now it's sitting on the second reading calendar, the rules on the floor of the Senate, ready for a vote. So that bill, as I said, allows some additional new types of testing for meeting high school graduation requirements, rather than just a one single test that is a do or die. You would still have to take that test, but it wouldn't be there'd be a number of different types of tests you could take to meet the same requirements. Questions or comments, or do you want me to go through all 3 first?
I don't think we have any questions.
Okay.
Could you just go through all 3, please?
Next one is Senate Bill 5155, which concerns suspension and expulsion of kindergarten and early elementary school students. This is by Senator Billig, who's actually from over there in Spokane, and serves on the Senate Education Committee. So it may be of particular interest because I bet that he'd be excited to engage with you in conversation on this if it's one that you want to follow closely. Basically, it says if a kid is in kindergarten, first or second grade, don't suspend them. They're just little kids, for criminy's sake.
Yeah.
So, and certainly don't expel them because their brains are still growing. They're still learning how to get along with other people. So, that's that. It's silly to impose that on them. Also clarifies that any removal from the classroom isn't to punish kids, but only for developing a plan to help the kid figure out how to get along with other people or to do their work well, and requires school districts to put in place some policies that prevent any of that from ever happening in the first place. Helps target resources to kids who may run into trouble in those early grades. So that's an interesting one to me because I have a little kid and I have a couple kids older than you guys, and suspending or expelling kids in general always has seemed sort of medieval to me, and especially when it's for how they're K through 2. What is that? Ages 5 through 7 or something like that. I mean, they can barely get their pants on, right? Much less send them home for acting out. So sorry, I probably should be giving you my strong opinions, but you know what you're in for at this point.
No problem.
That's the second bill. Third one, and that bill, sorry, thank you, Dave. That one, just like the first one we talked about, made it through committee, got to the Rules Committee, but didn't make it to a vote of the full Senate last year. Got put in the X file, which is for dead bills. Got resurrected this year. Down, as you can see, as Dave's highlighting down there, moved to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee has now put it on what's called second reading, which is the Senate floor calendar is referred to as second reading. So it's ready for a vote of the Senate whenever they get to that on their agenda. They've been moving only a handful of bills so far. So again, the fact that it hasn't received action doesn't mean it won't receive action. They just haven't sort of shifted into that phase of their activity yet. The legislative year is broken up into different pieces where, for example, today all bills have to be out of the committees that they were originally heard in. If they're not out of the committee by today, they're dead. They have to get out of any committees that deal with money issues by next Tuesday. If they don't make it past that hurdle, they're dead. Then there's about 10 days, I think, before, I think it's the 12 days, I guess it's the 14th. Yeah, so by Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day, the bills have to get out of the committee or out of the House that they were introduced in. So Senate bills have to make it out of the Senate, House bills out of the House, or they're dead. And so that's to, make sure that only bills that have support keep moving through the process and get attention. Otherwise, we'd be spending a lot of time on a lot of bills that really didn't have any chance. It's a way to sort of cull the herd. It's called cutoff. Every step there's a committee cutoff, fiscal committee cutoff, House cutoff, etc., and stuff that doesn't get the votes by the deadlines are left behind. And there's ways to bring those back in other forms, but in general, that's pretty hard to do. The last bill that Karina had sent me is Senate Bill 5596, which gets rid of BECA and the BECA proceedings that suspend or put under court supervision students who don't attend school, who have truancy problems, or other types of things. So it phases out juvenile detention for what are called status offenders, quote unquote, which means that you if I did it, it wouldn't be a crime, but because you do it because you're under the age of 18, it's a crime. So it would phase that out by 2020. It would phase out juvenile detention for truancy by 2018. It would phase out ignoring the truancy order by 2020, and it would, and that if there are young people in juvenile detention for non-criminal behavior, that again, you did something that is only illegal because you're 17 as opposed to it not being illegal when you're 18 or 21, to require separate detention facilities or separate detention blocks in juvenile detention for teenagers who had done quote unquote status offenses versus offenses that that are truly criminal in nature. So it's mostly looking at Becca, but it also expands it beyond that to do additional couple reforms in the juvenile detention system. So that's what those three bills were that that Karina shared with me that she indicated may have some interest to you guys because of your own experiences or just just cause. So go ahead and close that window. Oh, and that one okay. Thank you. Sorry, Dave. Um, was introduced last year again. Got stuck in the process this year. Has gotten action in the committee, and now is again on the second reading for the Senate for consideration. So all three of those bills are sort of locked and loaded for consideration by the Senate next week or the week after.
Nick, I want to survey the group here real quick. I didn't realize that last bill was as extensive as it is. Just real quick, guys, put your hands up. No shame, whatever. Have you ever been Becca involved? Okay, so Nick, we've got at least half of our population here is Becca has been or is currently involved with that. So that, I didn't realize it was totally like taking that, it would just remove the, any sort of,
Becca. Yeah, it would go back to the old system of school-based truancy, you know, and detention for truancy, but it wouldn't allow the system to lock up kids for truancy because there's a strong feeling in the you know, again, this none of these are slam dunks. This one, as you said, is going to be particularly controversial because there's a lot of people that feel that there needs to be a hammer on kids. And forgive me for referring to you as kids, but you know, legal status and all that on students. There we go. That are not complying with those rules, and that they want to use the juvenile detention system to, you know, enforce those school orders. So it is very controversial. I raised my hand when you guys did because both of my older kids have been involved in the Becca system, and so I know from a parent perspective both the frustrations with the system as well as the frustration with my kids of the system. So you know, both of my kids, I have two kids that one that has a GED and he's almost 31 years old now, and my older daughter is 20 years old, and she like you guys, ended up getting having an alternative route to graduation rather than the local school that her peers went to. So you know, everybody has their own path forward, and both of them were involved in the Becca system as well, and it wasn't fun for anybody. You know, I think that there are a lot of folks that believe that there as I said, need to be that tougher penalty for not following the rules, but there's a lot of other folks that feel that it's being misused. So that is very controversial. The other two, much less controversial, but similar types of things, trying to back away from a one-size-fits-all approach, both in terms of testing in the first case of Senator Chase's bill and in essentially, you know, penalizing little kids in the case of Senator Billings' bill.
Does anybody, just off the top of your head, do you guys have any questions about any of these? I mean, the kindergarten, first, second grade doesn't directly affect you, but maybe you have family, and obviously you raise your hand, and it could affect you at some time. And then again, a lot of you are Becca involved. Do you have a feeling one way or the other? Do you hope it passes? Do you hope it doesn't pass? And the first thing I'm thinking is like, some of you who I know and love, I would never know and love you unless it was Becca. You wouldn't be here. That's what I'm thinking. But what is your response to that? Would you be here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that having Becca in place discourages kids from going to school, students from going to school? Or did I mix it up? I'm saying the fact that we have it gets kids to school.
I don't agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Ling? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Can you hear any of this, Nick?
Just bits and pieces.
Okay, yeah. We just have people on both sides of the fence. Is there anything that we can do sort of, well, Gavin, that was your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, is there anything that you think us as students could do to try and make any of these bills passed or the way that we see fit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that on all three of them, there's the opportunity for you guys to provide your input to the process. As I said, next week and the week after, they'll be considering these bills on the floor of the Senate. The following week, if they make it through the Senate, they'll get hearings in the House of Representatives. So there's a couple things we could do on any of them or on other bills that you guys want to weigh in on. So assuming that's one of these bills, we could, as I think we did before with previous classes, have you guys craft a letter that expresses your opinion on any of these bills, or if there are different folks in the class that have different opinions on the bills, not to create too much work for anybody, but you could do letters on all three of them, right? If different groups of you wanted to, or other bills, right? I'm not trying to lock you into anything, but if there are folks who feel strongly about getting rid of Becca, writing a letter in support of that legislation. If there are folks that feel strongly about, that Becca serves a positive purpose, you could write that letter, right? I mean, and different folks in the class could do that, and I don't know, that could serve as a springboard for more intensive conversation there in class, maybe a little more intense than you want. But so that's something. In addition, or alternatively, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, when they're having the hearings on that, we could try to find ways for you guys to participate in that if you guys are able to come over, or some committees will allow you to do remote access testimony if you arrange for it far enough ahead of time. And so not all committee chairs allow that because they don't want a free for all of, heaven knows who calling in from all over the state. But if we make an appointment, so to speak, if we reserve that opportunity, let the committee know ahead of time that there are one or more people from there that want to connect electronically, you could do testimony just like this. And we could, it's more formal, obviously, because you're talking to the committee, you're presenting your case, et cetera, and you have to follow some rules, and we can work on that to figure out how to make that happen for you, either in person, again, if one or more of you wanted to come over, or by doing it remotely, which I haven't done a lot of. They don't do a lot of it, just because it's sort of administratively difficult, technological connections, et cetera, et cetera. But I think particularly on these bills, given that all three of them affect your personal experience or those of your families, I would think that they would be open to allowing for that. So on any of these three bills, I think there's the opportunity to do that. And I'd be happy to help you figure out how best to craft your message, who to address it to, if you're going to testify remotely, how, what the rules are for doing that. We could fit in another one of these sessions prior to that, if the timelines don't sync up already, and get you prepped for that. So, and I think any of the three of these is open to that. From a from a lived experience standpoint, I don't know how many of you the suspension and expulsion thing as younger students applied to, but or if you have siblings that is, has hit or whatever. But I think that provides an additional opportunity. As I think I said earlier, Senator Billig is the senator from your area, and so I would think he would be particularly open to working with you to figure out how to get your guys' input. It's less directly related to who you are now as young adults. The other two, the alternative testing method and obviously the Becca stuff, are much more directly applicable to your current lives. But any one of those we could work with to, or all three of them, to figure out how to get you a speaking role, so to speak.
My colleague has a question. She's coming up here.
Nick, is there any in between on the Becca? Can you hear me?
On the closer, because I can't hear you.
On the Becca issue, you said either to get rid of the Becca and go back to the old system, maybe. Is there any conversation about streamlining Becca or improving the system so that we can help kids get to school versus going back to the old system or staying with Becca, which is cumbersome and rarely the paper seems to scare students and scare parents, but as teachers, we know that it's almost never carried out, or very rarely in our experience. So it really doesn't work. Neither systems work. What's in the middle? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, my assumption is that that's where we'll end up, right? We always end up in the middle, one way or the other. Really, rarely is there something that stays in place as is permanently, right? Rarely is something just tossed out the window altogether permanently. Usually where things happen is some sort of phased-in approach or some sort of compromise. What this bill does right now is gets rid of the old system, right? Or the current system, I guess I should say. If the bill doesn't pass, the current system stays in place. So it doesn't go backwards to an old system, which I may have used that terminology. It stays with the existing Becca system. If the bill passes as is, then Becca's gone in a year, over the next 2 years. There are certainly going to be discussions about ways to improve this legislation. I doubt that it will pass as is because it is very controversial, and folks on both sides, both Republicans and Democrats, I think probably have mixed feelings about Becca, the Becca laws. And so my sense is there may be opportunities to, if you both as staff and parents, if you as students that have lived within this have suggestions about ways to improve the system, if you don't feel that it should be thrown out, then that's something to talk about as well. I mean, there's a third letter, right? You can split the class up in thirds depending on your opinions or whatever. Or for those who say, no, we don't want to throw this out, maybe your preferred alternative is not just keeping what we have right now, but keeping the system that we have right now, but doing it better. And that's and all those are alternatives, right? So I mean, this is a good conversation because this is what we do as professionals over here, right? Well, I like the policy of the bill because I don't like Becca. It's just me, not how I really feel, but I don't like Becca, but I don't know that we should just get rid of it. But I really don't like the system as it is now, so we should pass something. So how do we craft that in a way that gets the votes and solves the problem? Sorry for coughing in your ear. We have the Olympia plague over here right now. When your job is shaking hands with people, right? Everybody gets sick over and over again. Plus, I have a toddler, so she's like a germ factory.
That's cool. Yeah.
What toddlers are for, though?
What's that?
That's what toddlers are for.
That is what toddlers are for. Yeah, make it stronger.
Exactly.
Well, we have a lot to think about. I think I noticed a pretty big shift in the room when we said time about Becca. So I think if that's okay with you, we'll wrap it up for today and talk about what's next. And I'll send you an email if that works about sort of
And if you want feedback about what about alternatives and so forth and timelines, I'll put that in an email to you guys as well, so that you can be thinking about it, sort of where your voice can make the most impact. But all three of these bills are gonna, it appears to me, are gonna continue moving through the process. And so there'll be more opportunities both on this in the Senate as they consider legislation and this legislation in the next couple of weeks, and then in the House when it gets to that stage. And again, happy to help you connect to having your opinions heard however you want.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nick. It's always a pleasure.
Everybody.
Have a good week.